probed. Now, in a reaction, the former aide to the former presidents, Olusegun Obasanjo, and the present aide, both made separate remarks, all similar remarks, saying that the Obasanjo had indicated or suggested information in his book and is very ready for probe. But what are your thoughts on this interesting twist of events?
Well, I find it very interesting. Major reason is about 2 weeks ago, I put out a tweet and I made 10 predictions on what Buhari is going to do if he is re-elected. And number 3 or number 4 on that list of predictions is that he is going to arrest either and or Obasanjo and Tinubu.
He may.
Well, he may arrest either one of them
if re-elected.
If re-elected, that is my prediction. That is my opinion.
That's interesting because you're predicting that he's going to arrest the leader of his the leader of his party.
Yes, because if I was in Buhari's shoes and he wants to be known for stamping out corruption in Nigeria or be seen to stamp out corruption in Nigeria, if I were in his shoes, I think those two people would be top on my list if I really wanted to break the table. You know, so anyway, that is my opinion, and we'll get to see what happens.
They're called sound bites. This is an election period.
No,
they're referred to as
now,
sound bites.
A
lot of wait, but let's go to the story.
But I have a question.
Yeah.
All right. While you go into the details of the story, this same call was made by Sarah.
Yeah.
In 2016.
Yeah.
Then they wrote a petition to the then Chief Justice of Nigeria. That's Walter Onoe, acting Chief Justice of Nigeria at the time, and asked him to requested that he appoint a special counsel to investigate allegations on this money spent on electricity. But nothing was done, and this is 2019.
Well, great. OBJ in himself, by himself, has always said that one, he did not embezzle the money, and he has always stated that he has put out information about that 16 billion over time. In his book, in chapters 41, 42, 43, and 47, and also via other reports that he has given over time. Now, he has stated that the power, because there was this trend that was out some time ago, OBJ, where is the power? He has stated that the power is in the 7 national integrated power projects and 18 gas turbines, you know, that are scattered all across the country now. But the presidency now obviously wants to look back on what happened all the way back to between 1999 and 2007, which is quite interesting. That is 1.2 trillion naira, which apparently went to about 27 companies. That is quite interesting as well. So this probe is going to be what I call very interesting, because even the National Assembly at a point tried to probe, and they came out and said, oh, they had looked through it carefully, that these turbines that I just said were not put into consideration when the 16 billion figure was put out, and that they've looked through it now, and they have seen that maybe there was actually no fraud at that time. But one thing that is at the back of my mind is, yes, Buhari wants to go against this power probe, or wants to go for this power probe, but is there sincerity of purpose behind it?
An intention?
Yes. Is it because he really wants to go out and find out how the money was spent, or is it because he's being vindictive against Buhari?
Or is it huff and puff like Deveo suggested?
Well, why I say I don't think it's huff and puff when it's Buhari. Why I say this is this. Professor Sage said something about 8 months ago, particularly referring to this story when he was asked what his committee was doing, and he said they didn't have the powers to investigate at that time because they did not have the mandate. But he made a statement which I just want to read out. He says, if anybody wants to make capital of politics by running down the government, which is the most upright government we have ever seen since Murtala Muhammad, then this government may have to show that it is a government of principle and a government that has a will to suppress corruption, and those who challenge it will face the music.
So just before you round up, let's recall, it's not so long ago, just last week, the same group that instigated this investigation, or rather suggested that investigation should start on this in 2016, still Sarah last week there's a story that they requested under the Freedom of Information Act, the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Fashola, to present the names of these companies or individuals who benefited from that, monies
at that time.
But they said they had no record of this. But anyway, we'll keep
what I heard Fashola saying was that, what I read that he said was that he had no record of people who are taking monies and not completed projects. Not that there was no of people who collected money.
But alas, there's no light.
Well,
right.
For how many more years?
Let's move on now to this next story. From Premium Times, over 4,000 card readers destroyed in fire in Anambra. Recall that not so long ago, Plateau States, we had similar incidents in Abia State as well. And it points, it just casts a bigger question on the attention to security by the Independent National Electoral Commission. According to this report, INEC said that 4,695 smart card readers were destroyed by fire that razed its facility in Anambra State on Tuesday. Deveo, we're 3 days to the election. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, you know how it goes. One drama each day, or one day, one drama. Now, once bitten, twice shy, it speaks to conspiracy. There was a fire in Abia State. There was a fire that burnt down card readers in Plateau and now Anambra.
So when you say conspiracy, what are you suggesting?
This just cannot be a mistake. Why is it not burning in the building beside INEC? Why INEC? So we need to take a look at this. The authorities need to give us answers. INEC has said investigations are being taking place, but it reeks of sabotage. And in some cases, somebody even saying that some of these states that are burning in opposition states where they don't want them to have their elections.
We'll discredit all those.
Yes.
Those are just mere rumors.
However,
it cannot be taken here on this platform.
I'm trying to connect the dots. Now, the truth is this. That's why I said, why were these fires taking place only where the card readers were? There are questions to be answered. Secondly, INEC has said that would not stop or deter the election, that spares from states that have extras would be sent to those states. Well, I don't see how that would be efficient just 3 days to the election.
Why not?
Secondly, if you also remember, the incident report is still valid. And that's an issue Nigerians need to keep a very open eye about, because the guidelines according to this election, because Buhari did not sign the electoral bill, means we are still operating as of 2015. I think the only routine that's being changed is that we would accredit and vote at the same time, as against accredit, count, and then come back again and vote. So Nigerians need to be, and I know in some places no Nigerian wants to be disenfranchised on account of not having card readers available. So that is where the incident report plays a role. And if you know, the use of the incident report simply means that where your PVC is not working, although it doesn't speak of availability, the electoral officer is meant to count the number of voters there and paste their names on the polling station. Well, some have said that's the opportunity to rig, but Nigerians, shine your eye, keep your eyes open. This election must produce a better Nigeria.
That's right, and that should be the focus. Just not pay attention to the rumors, please. Moving on now to this next story. Adedunmade, you have to take us through this from Vanguard newspaper. Breaking news. The Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, ASUP, has suspended their over 2 months old strike that they embarked upon last December. They were requesting, or they went on the strike because they said that the federal government failed to implement the agreements that they reached with them in 2017, and gave reasons for calling off the strike, saying that it's on the condition that the government commits to review memorandum of action to solidify resolutions and ensure full implementation. Lots of grammar. But the import of this is what exactly?
Yeah, basically, I think we can now agree that we have a government over time, not just this present administration, that does not keep to our agreement. Because every time a body goes on strike, it's always about one agreement that was made 10 years ago that has not been upheld to that. For instance, this one is about two agreements, one in 2009 and the other in 2017, and basically they both cover details of the working conditions of members of the union, review of obsolete what they call policy documents, and non-existent or deplorable state of educational facilities in their institutions. Now, this just sounds like the same thing ASUP is saying, or was saying, while they were on strike as well, because mostly they both strikes bother on the same thing. What is important for us here is to note that we are not spending enough on education. Basically, that is the result of this, and we've not been doing so for a long time. So are we going to continue not doing that? Because now the strike has been called off, but it doesn't mean this is the last time that we're going to strike. There was a calculation that said that we've gone on strike for a cumulative period of about 5 years. That is time enough to get a law degree.
But here's my personal question to you, Adedunmade. Are we not bored of strikes? Are there no other ways to get results other than just going on strike? Because it seems as if it's not been effective.
If you notice, like strike is usually used as a last resort. They usually try and talk and mediate and and try and negotiate amongst themselves with the government until maybe it's time for elections. Then they call a strike, because they know that if they don't call a strike at that time, they might not get attention on their claims or what they are praying that is rectified in their institutions. Now we must also understand that yes, we're tired of strikes, the students are tired of strikes, but we have to look at it from everybody's point of view, from the point of view of the government, from the point of view of the students, and also from the point of view of the lecturers. Now the students are tired of strike, yes, but are you happy with the level of education you're getting generally?
Thank you.
Now it's important to also note that they have said that they're suspending it, and if the actions that the government have said or committed to isn't done, they will review it to do it again. So it's not like we've seen the end of it.
It's
in
not
fact,
the end,
and
yes.
like you mentioned, unfortunately, history has told us that the government oftentimes do not honor the terms of of agreements. So like Valentine had said, how do we then, is there a better way, number one? Number two, how do we then hold the government to account to ensure that they have a sense of integrity?
Is there a better way? Not really.
Address the funding issues, obviously. That's just it. Right? I mean, if the government can address the funding issues of
That's the
in
point. The
education
government
sector.
is broke.
Thank you.
So privatization.
Really?
All the universities?
No. Well, you can actually give, you give.
We have to keep it
Okay,
moving.
all right, keep it moving.
We'll go Machidas here some water. One of the reasons why I hate Buhari's government is the impression they created on this so-called fight against corruption. Well, I do not know if it's just me. Suddenly OBJ is going to be probed because OBJ is against its re-election bid. Questions here and there. Let's move on to our next story very quickly. We have this one in from the Guardian newspaper, and Gbolahan, this one is for you, so you have ample time to go through the story. The report on the National Bureau of Statistics yesterday that the economy recorded 2.4% growth in the fourth quarter of 2018 drew widespread criticisms. Now, according to the report, they said the economy grew in 2018, culminating in a gross domestic product of 1.93% of the year, from 0.82% in 2017. But then again, based on the statistics now, all the reports from the RGP, Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the experts are saying no, that is not exactly true, that it's inflated.
Well, according to this report anyway, what the report is simply saying is that, as you mentioned, there are some economists, I'll refer to his name anyway, Professor Valentine Ohu, who is the executive chairman of the Society for Analytical Economics. He's criticizing the growth that we're experiencing or that we're witnessing for 2018 and questioning it as not legitimate enough. Simply put, the reason why he's actually querying this growth as well too is, to put it in layman's terms, he's talking about not feeling the effect of this growth that we're talking about. I mean, he's actually making references to situations such as the unemployment figures that we have in the country, the state of the nation, the way people are generally feeling as well too. And so he's also tallying it also to the fact that we're looking at the state, both state and the federal government as well too, not having fiscal balance in the terms of talking about, quite a lot of states are actually heavily borrowed as at present at the moment now, and the federal government is also borrowing as at present heavily as well too. So he's laying his emphasis on the doubt of the GDP growth based on those sentiments that he sees as well.
But would you call them just sentiments? The debt profile is increasing.
Yes,
annually.
the debt profile is increasing, but we cannot begin to play politics with the GDP figures. I mean, in 2016 anyway, 2017, we experienced sluggishness in the economy, and we did not actually query that as at that point in time. Yes, I do understand the sentiment as well, because when we're talking about growth anyway, we're not growing enough. We're only growing at 1.93%, which is not translating into improved lives, better jobs, more jobs being created as well. So what we're expecting the government to do is also to see that there is sufficient growth. We need to be growing faster than our population growth anyway. We're currently growing at about 3% population wise, and so of course if you're growing below, if your GDP growth is below population growth, you will not feel the impact of the GDP growth. So we need to be growing at 5, 6, 7% to feel the impact.
It does not happen by magic. Even developed
It'll take
countries,
time.
even the
It'll take
United
time.
States,
It will take time.
They're incurring a lot of debt, over $22 billion. But anyway, let's move on to this next story. We take messages before we go to our next story. Amako Chimobi from Olodia Papa sent this one on WhatsApp.
Says, good morning, House. Please, why this sudden INEC fire incident recently, all of these days before the forthcoming election? Fire has not been heard with INEC materials. Please be watchful.
And Okweoluwa from Irawa says, the proposed probe by PMD for money spent by OBJ is a clear indication that the whole anti-corruption bid is a payback program against opposition that is not peculiar to the present administration. These precedents will not help this country. We must stop a cherry picking. Would OBJ be probed if he were in good terms with PMD? No. Sincerity is lacking here, he says. This is exactly why Nigeria would not move forward with all the blasts of the past leaders. And very quick message here. Ayo Daily sent in a message. It says, question said, please, how true is it that we're using our index finger to vote in the election as against the thumb?
Great question there, because we're just having the discussion earlier this morning, and talking about the fact that the INEC has changed it because of the number of void.
They didn't
votes.
change it. They're only encouraging people to use the index finger because you're most unlikely to void the vote by crossing the line.
Yes.
When you use the thumb. So it's just an encouragement, which actually the parties are trying to push, because most times when you use your thumb, you're more likely to rub it across the line.
And it's uncomfortable.
Yes, once it crosses the line, that vote is void. Yes, so.
Right. Thank you very much, Deveo. Thank you, Ayodele, for that question. Very timely as well. Now, we'll move on to our next story from the Vanguard. Kogi loses 50 billion naira in cashew nuts. Talking about GDP growth, talking about the economy, and now we have reports here from the Kogi state government yesterday that the state lost about, that amount, because last year, in 2017, they made 70 billion in the sale of cashew nuts, but declined to 20 billion naira in 2018 due to the effect of adulterated nuts from the sellers. Deveo.
Yes, it's one story that many do not look at, but to the surprise of many, each state, even the most how do I call it, inconspicuous, are rich, like Kogi. Kogi most times can be seen as a poor state, whereas Kogi actually has some of the richest solid and natural resources within the country. And one of the key ones here is cashew, of which they're one of the large producers in the country. Now, last year there was a dip in the sale. They lost about 50 billion. This was due to adulteration and lack of quality of control. Now, usually the adulteration has to do with mixing between old and new nuts, and quality control issues have to do with packaging. When you talk of cashew, that's raw cashew, RCN. The moisture content, if you don't dry it properly, it spoils along the way. So most times it's rejected at the point of export. Now, from 2017 to 2018, there was a dip from 70 billion to about 20 billion. And I think the story also then highlights the international crisis that took place, some dynamics that had to do with pricing. But the main meat here is that Kogi has been able to create some level of commercialization for itself using its natural resources, even though processing will take it even further. But this is a indicator to other states to create operating environments where investors can come around and also invest in your own state. Look within. Now, what does this do? It creates IGR, which many states are dearly lacking, and it also generates employment for our teeming youths who do not have jobs. So instead of running around and becoming what do you call them, hoodlums for politicians that do not have your interest in mind, Nigerian youth, draw your ears now. You need to hold your leaders, the leaders that you're about to vote, accountable. What plans do they have to get you employed? What plans do they have to use the resources within your states? Everybody cannot come to Eko. You must stay within your state and develop it. So hopefully this year Kogi will get it right and increase in their earnings.
All right, thank you very much. Now it's important to know that in 2017, Nigeria earned 144.7 billion naira cashew exports to Vietnam and other countries, and we're one of the biggest exporters and producers of cashew in Africa and of course the world as well. Moving away from that, our next story: to curb drug abuse, NAFDAC declines registering alcohol packaged in sachets. This is from the Punch newspaper. NAFDAC have said that the alcohol packaged in sachets had greatly contributed to increasing drug and alcohol abuse in the society, and they're looking to stop registering it and phasing it out, gradually. Well, a good move, or not so effective?
Well, I support the move, most especially when we're talking about trying to curb drug abuse menace that we have in the country. Of course, we know the situation that we're going through in the country with the youth, especially when we're talking about drug abuse of various substances. And people tend to forget sometimes as well too that alcohol is also another form of drug as well too, which can be heavily abused. So when NAFDAC is talking about stopping the registration of alcohol packed in sachets, it makes a lot of sense, because when we're talking about, because it's accessibility that we're talking about now. I mean, you go to a lot of bus parks and you find a lot of these sachets just littered around the floors all across everywhere. I mean, there are quite a few of it just littered all over, the streets as well too. And so you can see that the accessibility is readily available. It needs to be curbed to some extent as well too. So I'm in support of it. It's a good move, and we need to do a lot more as well to stem the tide of the drug abuse menace that we have ongoing in the country. The second part of this story also talks about trying to encourage a lot more local production of herbal medicines. I mean, in the country we do quite a lot of heavy importation of herbal medicines as well too. So right now NAFDAC is also looking at encouraging quite a lot of local production in the country, and as a way of incentivizing people to doing that as well too, is what they're doing is they're looking at how they could give you a 5-year import permit to import, but at the same time as well, you have to have a 5-year plan as to how you can locally produce this herbal medicines. Because of course Nigeria is also one of the richest countries when we're talking about herbal medicines. We have a lot of plants that can be converted into herbal medicines as well too, and not a lot is being done in the research area of that as well. So we need to do a lot of research. It will generate a lot of revenue for the country.
And I also think the major focus should be on regulations, because you cannot necessarily knock all those products that are packaged in different forms. But it's the regulations.
That's anti-free trade.
Yes. So
Deveo, you're sounding really passionate about it. However, we cannot, while we talk about regulation, we cannot also remove the fact that when a product is easily accessible, it also encourages abuse as well, because people who would necessarily not have access to it.
Well, for grown-ups, for those above 18, by the law, as you said, regulation, just like cigarettes, you must hold yourself responsible for your own usage. But to control that, no. I mean, remember there's a tax they enjoy from that.
Yes.
If you reduce that, well, okay.
All right, let's take a few messages here. Justin EJ sent in this one. It says, what does crossing the line void the vote? How does crossing the line void the vote? They can't scan it. They cannot count it because there's ink across the line, or what? And why are there no fire incident management contingencies on the sensitive INEC locations where the PVCs are stored? We do not have risk management protocols. This is why the old brigade needs to retire. No vision, no common sense.
All right, I think, because when usually the parties, you would cross the line.
Yes,
and then
it's first of all, understand that it's the rules. Your thumbprint or your prints must go within the box. Now, most people didn't know that if it crosses the line, that it will be cancelled. So please understand that and know that now, which is why INEC and the parties are trying to drive this understanding.
Please protect your votes, very important. Moving on very quickly.
Your index finger is the finger you use to point.
Yes.
All right, very quickly. To curb, to go to our next story, grazing cattle destroy Unilorin's multi-million naira research found. Now the VC has decried the instructions, had a meeting, a security meeting with the locals, and they've got Fulani settlement, and said that they have to stop illegal grazing in University of Ilorin. Such a menace.
Well, this is them stepping up their position because they have destroyed some multi-million naira research facilities that they had.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
No, go on.
and this had taken place about a year ago, where they gave them a quick notice. Not only were they illegally grazing, they were also settling within the compound. Now, they called a meeting with the security forces at play to see how they could address it. Now, the Métis Allah has responded that they must have been from other places and not them.
Yeah.
That there were other ethnicities also operating there. They were not Fulani, and that they were into logging and they were not called out. Well, the truth is this: here we go again with some of the insecurity that we're facing. And in this case, the university is suffering it, just like every other.
A huge loss of money.
Yes. Now, come Saturday and also 2 weeks after, ensure that you vote for the
So
capacity.
everything boils down to voting.
Yes,
All
the
right.
good governance.
Okay,
Ensure that you capture it so that we do not continue living in in an atmosphere that is unsafe for both dwellers, residents, and also commercial people, as well as
and also very important
students.
to point out that herders are not particular to any ethnic group. Anybody can be a herder,
Right.
right? So there's no ethnicity tied to that.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on. We have a very limited time, so I'd just like you to touch on this really quickly. Gbolahan, stores importing GMO food without permits will be shut. Last week Wednesday we had
Yes.
Dr. Jerry, where we had Farmer Ike touch on this topic.
I mean, this is by the National Biosafety Management Agency, and normally they're in charge of GMO foods or so, and they've been heavily criticized over the last few years of hurriedly giving approvals for GMO crops such as cowpeas and beans and cotton as well too. So right now at the moment they're actually sounding out a warning as well too, that going henceforth they would be a little bit more stringent in giving, not stringent, but what they're saying is that if you were importing GMO foods without any permit, you will be severely sanctioned and
Shut
dealt
down the
with
store.
also.
So just to sound a note of warning, because last week when we discussed it, we talked about the fact that GMO hasn't just been recently introduced. You buy them in your stores. The only thing is that they're regulated so that what comes in has been properly done. Unfortunately, we cannot take our last story. We'll
Apologies,
just
Adedunmade. Choma sent in a message on WhatsApp. Choma said, I applaud NAFDAC, however, they need to also do something about the local ones sold in nylon bags. That is very true. Okoyemi here says, good morning, crew. So we want to ban alcohol sachets? No.
Imagine.
They're not necessarily banning it, they're only just stopping the approvals.
One from Yaba says, while I think the probe of the power sector under OBJ is important, I think it is pertinent to ask if the probe would have happened if OBJ was still in the good books of the MB government. A similar question here. And Justin says, well, the question is, why does it void the votes? Just speaking to the index
Because that's the regulation.
So why does the
because
rule...
you cannot be sure who the
You're
person has
voting for.
voted for. The person
If you
above
have
the line
multiple
or the
prints.
person
Below
below
the
the
line.
Yeah,
line.
you have
So
multiple
why
prints.
So it's even
Why do-
protecting your votes as well.
The message hasn't finished. So
Oh,
why does
sorry.
that rule exist if not as a tool for subjective disenfranchisement? Also
No.
says switching up the rules close to the election also has the same effect. Voting traps all over the place.
And there's been a campaign, very wide campaign, with them, sensitizing the public. And what we discussed earlier on today was as well that we hope that people, even the INEC officials at the polling units, would be able to tell people to preferably use their index finger. Well, this is our public service to you. It's been said if you'd rather protect your vote, please use your index finger. It's usually safer, and then avoid
It's a matter
to
of
hit them.
choice.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's a matter of choice,
it's
but
a suggestion.
it's a suggestion to use it.
Some of us have fat fingers. So. Lagos, get your PVCs close to your chest. I see that. Put it in your first pocket. Hold it very close to you. Saturday is very close. Thank you very much. Special thanks to our analysts for coming in. Deveo Okorie, Adedunmade.
Vote, non-fights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we talk sports
Yes,
inside of the locker room. Remember, the highlight for World Radio Day today is sports in radio. Good morning.
The headlines.